Okay, then. The new album, third album, Culture of Violence, is only a few weeks away, probably even less by the time I pull my finger out and post this video. What can you tell me about the title of the album?
The title of the album was almost the last thing that we settled on. The only thing done after the title of the album was the artwork, which was a result of the title of the album.
Yeah.
It was the last song that we wrote, and lyrically, it was the last, even set of lyrics I wrote for the album. It kind of ties in everything the band has always been speaking about, but especially on this album, over the past couple of years, everything's been crazy. We've all lived through kind of the same stuff, just had different perspectives on it. But it was almost, by the time the final song was being written, instead of focusing on one specific occurrence or my reaction to one specific topic, it was kind of like a summation of everything that not just the band, but specifically the album had been about.
Yeah.
And by the time I had that in my mind, that was the direction I was going lyrically, the song kind of wrote itself. And the first line of the song, Unending Culture of Violence, that is what we've been living in for thousands of years. But I should really maybe only speak for my own existence. Past 41 years, like, what is the end of everything? How is everything resolved? A power play that results in violence, whether that's physical or mental or perceived or otherwise. So and then you I don't want to say simplify things, but you write things in, I guess, in my style, in a pseudo poetic way. Maybe sometimes even like a hip hop approach to a metal album. And Culture of Violence. We had a different album title for probably about 2 years. And once this song was written, it was like, yo, that's what it's got to be. And everybody said, yeah, that's much stronger. That's cool. So that was just the way that we went.
The other title, has that been kind of put on the back burner for use at another date, or is that more or less?
No, actually, ironically, the first song on the album is Culture of Violence, and the album title was going to be what is now the last song on the album, which is National Disaster, which we were happy with, and it made a lot of sense when we were writing the album and completing the album, especially, once the entire pandemic hit, speaking from us in America, at least. But as time went on, it didn't feel right anymore. And it felt almost a little pigeonholed, because we get pegged with the, political, quote unquote, political band thing, or, even social band. But I mean, this band's it's our reactions to what's happening in the world, and Culture of Violence just seemed, it sounds better for us. It fits the album better for us. And it just kind of, as soon as the song was written, it's like, oh, that's the way to go. And it just happened that the last song was a track listing, how it worked out. But I know it makes me like the song Culture of Violence more, knowing it's the title track of the album. And the song National Disaster has its own specific spot on the album now, especially as the last song.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's cool as well. It's like having a title like that. It's obviously has its own connotations, but it's kind of not vague, but broad enough that it can be applied to so much. It's like if you just called the album "World in Pain" or "Fuck Racism" or something, it's like point gets across, but
yeah, it's riding that line from being too on the nose, which I believe we are very direct in what we're saying and our opinions, and borderline confrontational. But at the same time, I don't always think it's so fun when something is so spelled out. We don't want the album to read like a third grade reader. I want people to, have their own spin on it. Although I may know what every song is about, either specifically or a broad overview. It's the age old thing, it's for anybody's interpretation, within reason. As well as if you take the literal meaning out of it and then kind of just get into the meathead, metalhead funness of it. We even went that direction right off the bat. The first tour that we're doing, supporting the album, we called it the Glorious Violence Tour, where the title of the album, Culture of Violence, puts that in a negative connotation. The tour, Glorious Violence, hey, let's go out. We're singing about this dark stuff. Everything is so heavy. When we're playing shows, let's just have a good time. Let's have a celebration, let's let loose and, have some responsible violence during our shows.
That's the very Exodus.
Yeah.
Well, it's been 4 years, give or take, since the previous album, Decimation Treaty. Obviously, in that time, a lot of circumstances have changed, not just for the band, but for everybody. But also, like, before Extinction A.D, you brought in the new bassist, Tom. So I believe this is his first album with the band. How was it? How did he fit in with the recording style?
You know what? The switch from Pete to Tom has been so seamless. But the reason why it's been so seamless is because even in the band we did prior to Extinction A.D, when we played in This Is Hell, which Pete, the original bass player, and I were both in, Tom would sometimes join us on tour and take over on bass, and Pete would jump over to second guitar.
Oh, okay.
Now with Extinction A.D, Tom was always kind of like one of the unofficial fifth, I feel like we have like two unofficial members of the band. Tom was always a part of the fold. Tom has a writing credit on our first EP. And now once Tom went from kind of the unofficial fifth member to the official fourth member, and Pete kind of transitioned from the fourth member to the unofficial fifth member, where Pete is still my writing partner. Pete has plenty of writing credits on Culture of Violence. And, Pete does almost all of our videos. He's like in our inner circle when we're talking about merch designs, just like our, manager and This Hell frontman, Travis, is involved in, it just are bullshitting about, marketing and who's fun to tour with and what album we like and, how we're trying to roast each other in a group chat. So that transition for Tom, he's been there since the beginning anyway. And even Pete, who's not, he's not on stage with us playing bass, he's just as much a member of the band as he's always been. So, we there's the core four of us on stage, but then we have, our other guys that are unofficially in the band. And then, we're all older guys, man. So sometimes we have to go on a tour and one guy just can't make it, so we'll bring in a fill-in drummer or a fill-in bass player for a tour. So, we kind of have our core four, and then we have like a large extended family also.
Excellent. That's really cool. It's like Extinction A.D as a unit as much as it is a band or anything like that. Very much a spirit.
Absolutely. And spirit is such a great word for that, because even, we just did a tour where, like I said, we had a fill-in drummer and bass player, because we've been doing so much touring since the lockdown ended that some people's jobs weren't ready for them to, hey, I got to take off for 6 weeks. Like, hey, weren't you just on tour for like 2 months? But we have like this constant communication, and it's kind of like everybody who's in the band is with us, whether they're, we only relate to them or communicate with them through a text message or a group chat for 6 weeks. They're in the thick of it as well. So a larger family, or kind of like the spirit of the band, is definitely a great way to put it. And dude, you know what? That makes it, sometimes it's a pain in the ass, because it's, a lot of cooks in the kitchen and, moving parts. But in all actuality, a lot of times it makes it a lot more fun, and it feels more like a team, as opposed to, we're just four guys in the band kind of doing what we can. And, nobody really understands what's happening unless you're, in this specific situation. It's cool to kind of have that support and, all this, positive input. And, the more friends you have and the tighter a larger group can be, the more you could insult each other through text message all day. So that's the essence of the band, roasting each other all day.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a lot of fun as well, man. But
It is. And you know what? If it's not fun, why bother? Especially at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's cool that the way you describe it is almost like, say for example, Madball. Madball is as a band, but they've also got the DMS crew thing, and Extinction AD. From what you describe it kind of sounds like the DMS crew as a smaller unit. So that's really cool. It's like there's a whole, like you say, a team.
Yeah. And it's cool to, have all this input coming from people that you respect, and everybody has, not every time anybody brings up any idea, it's a home run, but I mean, that's the nature of a team. And it doesn't really turn into a thing like, well, who cares what this person says because they're not on this tour, or like,
Yeah.
who cares what this person says because they didn't, record the whatever track for this album. It's cool to have that team and that kind of brotherhood behind, this band and this, over exaggeration sometimes us, but we feel like this, it's like an important movement is what this band is.
Yeah. Well, mentioning recording, how was the actual recording process for this album? Were you able to come together, or did these all have to kind of be done separate due to restrictions and things like that?
Dude, this recording process was the most ridiculous recording process that I've ever been a part of. First off, we started writing some of these songs. Oh man, I think the oldest song, if memory serves, musically, started in December of 2015. So I mean that predates, our last several releases.
Yeah.
But the writing process didn't end until I believe November of 2021. So there's a lot of time and lots of tweaking and addition and subtraction. So all that being said, the recording process we started in March of 2020. We were on tour. The pandemic hit real hard. They said, "Hey, tour's canceled. Go home." I'm like, what? So like, all right, let's start recording the record. Started recording the record. Hey, this pandemic's crazy. Nobody's being near each other. Like, get out of the studio. So we essentially recorded the drums for 10 songs. Everything went into complete lockdown. We didn't see each other in person for months and months and months. We did remote recordings and remote writing sessions and yada, yada. At that point, especially once we realized, hey, this is going to be a process, the lockdown for like at least a year, possibly 18 months. I said, screw it. I'm going to record all the guitars at home. I was still working and everything. We weren't on tour anymore. I had plenty of time. I set up a studio where I was living. And at that point I was like, hey, I'm not really on a deadline anymore. I spent 2 months recording guitars for this record. And then even once I was done doing, recording and editing, all that stuff, it's like, hey, we're at a standstill. We couldn't get back into the studio as time went on. And we were talking to our label at the time, Good Fight Music, and hey, when are we going to get back in the studio? When are we going to finish this record? Once those conversations came up, I was like, hey, what do you guys want to do? You're the business end. And, much like not just record labels, but so many other businesses, they had to completely restructure their business throughout the lockdown and figure out how to stay afloat. And part of that, a casualty of that was, we got dropped from the label, which, I fully understand. I mean, everybody had to make sacrifices, and, we're 4 guys, one of several bands on the label. Choices had to be made and choices were made. So at that point, we're like, we have a half-done record We haven't been on tour in at that point a year. We have no idea when this lockdown is going to end. We're going to get back out on tour. Like, what do we do? Do we just give up? So, I mean, we entertain that option for, about 7.5 seconds. And then, no, we're too stupid to do that. Like, of course, we're not going to give up. It's like, all right, if we're not going to give up, we need to double down. Let's write some new stuff remotely. Let's record it remotely. Let's essentially come up with a new demo and shop that around. So, that's what we did. We spoke to a handful of labels. Long story short, Unique Leader seemed like a perfect fit right off the bat. And that demo essentially turned into the Chaos Collision Carnage Propaganda EP, of which they just released.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if you already have this done, let's release that and build this next record. And once that all got set in motion, we said, okay, let's get back into the studio. Let's get the ball rolling. It looks like the lockdown's going to chill out. We're going to go out on tour in September and November, December, January, February, March. So, all right, hey, let's get the ball rolling again. So we went to go back in the studio, but being that we were sitting on these 10 songs, we had written and recorded the EP, we continued writing more songs. And we're like, the old Extinction A.D. would have said, all right, let's finish these 10 songs, these new songs we're writing. Let's wait to the next album, whenever that may be. And we're like, what are we doing? We constantly do that. We've always been like at least an album ahead. So much so, like I said, Decimation Treaty, we recorded and released in 2018, but some of these cultural violence songs were being written the tail end of 2015. It's like, why do we constantly wait on these songs? Like, we just wrote like a handful of new songs. Are these our best songs, even if they are brand new? Said, of course they are. All right, you know what? Let's edit ourselves. And we ditched a handful of songs from the original recording in 2020. And then instead of going back into the studio and just putting down vocals for the 10 songs we've done and, doing the mix, we said, screw it. We re-recorded a handful of songs and did some of these new songs. And in the meantime, setting up this long diatribe I'm giving you is setting up this new album. It was wait. Okay, go. And we have a deadline of this day, and we got to get a video done. We got to get recording done. We got to get artwork done. We have this tour coming up, yada, yada. All of a sudden, it was like, hey, we have about 3 weeks to get a year and a half's worth of stuff done. So I built a vocal booth in my place. I recorded all the vocals on my own. In the meantime, at that point, recorded the guitars for these newer songs on my own. We went to the studio. Scuzz laid down drum tracks for the new songs. And it's kind of like moving parts. A million things are being done at once, to the point where, like, all right, we have this deadline of a week that we need to get everything in. Like, here's all the guitars. Here's all the vocals. Let's get the drums edited. Let's get, these guitars reamped. And it was breakneck pace of getting this like thing that we sat on for like almost 2 years to almost like this brand new project getting completed in like a, like a 3 week to possibly like a 3-day process. But you know what? The urgency of that, as well as the brand new songs, instead of like, oh, I can't wait to hear this, 3-year-old song done properly and not, a demo version on my computer.
Yeah.
To go from creation of a song musically to learning it as quickly as possible as a band, and then, writing my lyrics and doing a quick demo of them and then honing them in all in the same room, to being in the studio and having a final mix and like, hey, let's make sure we get this mixed before we go out on tour. So we're not approving a mix, through email and having to listen to it like, hey, listen to it on your headphones. I'll listen to it in the car. We can go into the studio and then bring in other speakers and stuff. It was so much to do at once that it was like kind of like mind bending, but at the same time, it was so exciting. And I think that energy really like pops through when you listen to the record, which, I mean, people say that stuff all the time, talking about that new record, like, oh, this new record is so energetic. And if you like this aspect of the band, it's that only more. And everyone says the same stuff. But man, I'm going to also say that same stuff, dude. The energy is just like, it's so palpable, and it just crushes the energy that we've had prior on any of our records, in my opinion, at least. And that goes, not just, oh, we write energetic music, but I think these songs are, written better. I think sonically they sound better. I think performance wise, I think it's everybody's best recorded performance so far. And dude, I've been recording music now for longer than I want to admit, like 2.5 decades. So at this point in my life, to be like, oh, this is probably like the best guitar performance I had. And then especially, vocally, I have so much fun singing and yelling and screaming and bad singing, yada, yada. But I don't consider myself like a good singer or anything. But I could listen to this album and be like, yo, that sounds good, at least to my ears. And like, I am proud of that. And that is definitely like my best vocal performance. I think and lyrically, I think same thing. And they all kind of go hand in hand. Like, I'm really proud of my lyrics. And I think that comes through in my vocal performance, and everything kind of works off each other in that way. And, same thing. Everybody in this band is a professional and an adult, but still, to hear the lead guitar and be like, Ian, those are the greatest leads that you've written. And, Scuzz, the professional musician, he's been doing this forever, and be like, dude, this is like the best drum performance you've ever had. And, Tom has been with us, for the last EP, but to go from a home recorded EP to, hey, we're in a legit studio. Like, this is the best sounding record we've ever had. And to hear like Tom's grit on the bass, like, it's kind of, if you're from the 80s, it's like this Voltron thing. And if you're from the 90s or 2000s, it's like the first generation Megazord.
Yeah, that's it. I couldn't think of it. We're on the same wavelength there. Oh dear. But people would have known what I meant if I'd have said the big fucking dinosaur thing from Power Rangers.
Yeah. And I even like the second one, with the red dragon and the white dragon Zord.
Yeah.
But, you can't beat the original. Or maybe you can beat the original, whatever.
Yeah.
Have fun with everything.
Exactly, yeah. That's great though. I mean, like, you said there as well, like you're professional musicians and things. And you have to be really professional and really disciplined to have done what you've done and just go for this completely new approach and everything, and knowing that you're going to have next to no time to get everything done. I think a lot of bands would have just gone, oh, bollocks to that, I'll finish these songs later or something. We've got this.
This band has always been not okay. After the first 2 years where we were so calculated, and I was just speaking to somebody about this recently, I almost feel like we were overly calculated, and we made a lot of bad decisions as far as certain tours that we accepted, certain tours that we turned down, certain decisions as far as, hey, this is an older song, but let's push this forward, and then we'll take care of this newer stuff later. Yeah. Once we realized, hey, we're being too calculated, like we're making some bad decisions. Since then, this band has always been about biting off more than you could chew, and then just figuring out a way to swallow it and to make it work for you. And we've really embraced that over the past, the pandemic does stuff, well, to us, that's what it did. Like, you can't take this shit for granted, or you can, but then you're going to suffer from it. And then at that point, like, hey, everything that seems like it's going to be fun and worthwhile, let's go for it. If it's going to be really difficult, hey, if it was easy, anybody would do it. And the thing is, the internet and everything has made being a quote unquote professional musician a lot easier. So then you got to go above and beyond, because we're more than just internet people. Like, dude, there's people on YouTube and TikTok and all this stuff that are way better musicians than us. But that doesn't mean shit to me, man. It's your passion, your drive, and your message, and how genuine you are, and how far you're willing to go to kind of do what you think is right. and for the sake of all those things, and for the sake of self-satisfaction and gratification and doing something you think is important without the I guess fame about it. Not that, at this point fame doesn't mean it almost doesn't exist, because everybody is like either completely famous or a nobody. There's like it's all the same, because anybody could put their face on the telephone and be like, hey, now I'm famous, but at the same time, like, you're one of a million people also thinks that they're famous. So I would like to think that we have a good meeting of kind of like the old school work ethic of maybe oh, we're going to play a show, let's print out flyers and go to other shows and hand them out and stuff, as well as like, hey, let's embrace new things like using the internet and technology and social media and stuff like that. Which, I might even sound like a dinosaur saying that and thinking that I'm using those things properly, and I'm not. But trying to use everything in a positive way and tune out the negative stuff, and do something that we think is important and gratifying, and there's no time better than now, and that goes back to like what I was saying as far as the biting off more than you could chew. I said, hey, do you want to have the record out mid-March and also do all these tours? Because if you want to do that, that means like you need to get your artwork done at this time, the masters for the recording done in this time. If you want to do a video, you need it done by this time. And, you're also going on tour, so you need to get your merch done and all this stuff. It's kind of like, all right, well, we have 3 weeks or 2 weeks to get that together. On top of that, let's do a second video, because we think doing videos is fun. And, we're opening this tour. Like, hey, let's get a new backdrop and let's do this cool new merch design. Let's film a YouTube show. And, let's also, let's learn a brand new set list. Oh, we never played this song live before. Like, let's learn this real quick and put it in every night. It's just kind of the way that we've been, not since the very beginning, but once anything became like threatened, like, hey, this might not be a thing anymore, so get off your ass and do it. That's just the way we've been.
I gotta be honest, man, like hearing this work ethic and the history and everything, not just of this album, but the band especially, it really makes like a neutral or a newcomer or whatever want to support this band, knowing how much you put into it. Like, it's fucking ridiculous, to be honest.
You know what? It is ridiculous. And sometimes when I look at it on paper, or when somebody like a simple text message, like, hey, so like, what have you been up to? And I'll like, hey, I'm going to write out what I've actually been up to. And then I'll sit there and be like, yo, I am completely overwhelmed with like my to-do list for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, what else am I going to do? Like, let me kind of loaf around. And like, dude, I don't know how to half-ass something. If I feel like I'm going to half-ass something, I'm probably going to be like, you know what? I'm not going to bother, because I'm not going to waste. You know what? I don't like my time being disrespected. So I'm not going to disrespect somebody else's time by half-assing something, unless it's like my day job of something I don't give a shit about. And my day job is essentially supporting my music habit. But if something like doing music, which I've always done, I mean, we're not doing it for the money.
No.
Because if we were, then we have some weird math problems, because something's not working out right. So you got to do it for that gratification, and a lot of that gratification comes from you bust your ass so you could listen. Me at least, I want to listen to my record and be like, yo, this fucking rocks. Yeah. That's first and foremost. So if I could do that, and then the other guys in the band can do that, like, all right, well, where do you go from there? Like, well, I want to get out and play shows. It's like, well, why do you want to play shows? Is it like because jumping around on stage is fun and like pretending like you're the king of the world while you're on stage? Like, in all actuality, no, that part's not fun. And at my age, like, even the travel, that's not fun either. What's fun is getting up on stage and playing these songs that musically and lyrically are really important and affecting somebody else, whether they're taking your lyrics to heart and saying, hey, I never thought about it that way, or, I don't really agree with that, so let's have a conversation about it. Great. Sometimes, oh, hey, you guys were playing really fast and you said, hey, do a circle pit and do some push-ups in the middle of the circle pit. I'd never seen that, and it was so much fun. And everything else in the world that sucks didn't matter for,
Yeah.
30 minutes during your set, and then another 2.5 hours for the rest of the show. Like, that's an amazing feeling. And like, that's so gratifying. And that's all all these things are what's important about, doing the music. And that makes, sacrificing things in regular life worth it. As far as like, relationships and obligations and family stuff. And then even, the way some of us live monetarily, like I said, there's not a lot of money to be made in music, if at all, unless you're at like a extremely large level, which we're not. If I would love to get to that level, but that's never been the point for me. If we come home from a tour and I'm able to pay, the van payment and the van insurance and my rent, and I was able to eat, and I could replace tires on the van, and I could order more merch for the next tour, and then even aside from that, like, oh, I came home with a couple of bucks, so all the time I missed at work, I was able to supplement that from the band. So essentially, like, oh, I broke even on a tour personally. That is legitimately mind-blowing to me. Like, even as a kid, when I, what makes you want to be in a band? Like, well, I love Metallica. I never thought I would be Metallica. I never thought like, oh, you're going to be on Cribs or have a car that works. I never really thought about that stuff. So if I could even break even, or even just like not lose too much money, but I just went out on tour for 6 weeks and got to play my guitar every night and jump around stage and, crack jokes with people on stage, and then have a conversation about like, also like, what are the lyrics to your song 13 about? Like, dude, that shit is just like, that is kind of like the point of my life. And, I'm kind of just like stream of consciousness talking right here. And it's not like these are, I'm coming up with these revelations right now, but like just saying it out loud, like it reinforces like, yeah, that is why I do that. Like gratification and feeling like I'm doing something maybe not important to the world overall, but important to me and maybe important to other people. You can't put a price tag on that.
Absolutely. And yourself, like, I mean, you even mentioned it there, like, you play these shows, and like you say, you don't go out there to become millionaires or anything like that. But there's going to be people at every show that have had a shit day or crap week or whatever. And this little bit of time they get to spend with you, it's like a completely new world. And you've brought that to someone, and it must be an incredible feeling. Yeah.
Dude, exactly. There is in fact literally no other feeling close to that I've dedicated my life to chasing that as much as possible, essentially forever, even before, like I said, I just grew up a metal kid, in these untouchable metal bands. And it took me to start being in my own bands to realize that is what I was looking for forever from playing music. It wasn't to get up there and be Mr. Rockstar guy. And the thing is, like a tour we just did where we were the first of 4 on a package, I would say 98% of the crowd every night had never seen us before. So it's not like they were even there to see us, but for me to get up there, or for us to get up there and play, and to still get that feeling with 98% most of the time new people, like that is just so mind blowing. And then, that tour is a long tour, and we played some headline shows on the way back. So it's kind of like, all right, back to reality. We'll see like how many people come for us. And I was really surprised. We played in 4 areas that we'd never been before, cities specifically. People coming out for us, either like, oh, I had your last record, I had your first record, I just heard you on Sirius XM, or like, oh, you guys are really funny on your Facebook, and I think your music's pretty cool, I came to check you out. So it's like, oh, a lot of people heard of us, even if they didn't go to the shows, on the cattle decapitation tour that we just did, like, oh, well, you didn't come through my town with that tour. I saw you were on that tour. You're coming through on a headlining show in Odessa, Texas. So I came out to see you. And there it is. It's like, that's unbelievable. And like I said, it's so gratifying. And that is with no ego whatsoever.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I have a huge ego when it comes to plenty of things. But surprisingly, well, to me at least, surprising the way I'm talking. To me, when it comes to music and my band, aside from me talking to the other 3 guys or the other 5 guys, like, hey, I think our record fucking really kicks ass. I don't have an ego anymore when it comes to music. I did more when I was a kid. You're a kid. You're stupid. So it's really cool and super humbling when anybody pays attention to our band at all, let alone when we could essentially go out on tour throughout America for the past 6 weeks and be welcomed by all these in these different cities, and especially on our headline shows, very, very diverse crowds. We played very diverse shows. I mean, that is the most gratifying thing on top of everything else too, because it's not just, the stereotypical, metal guys like your band.
Yeah.
It's cool to even get beyond that a bit where, and music knows no bounds. Lyrics and topics, that knows bounds because it's so much more in the box. Even if you're writing something abstract, it's words, so it's in a box. So our specific message and lyrics, when that reaches people outside of the metal world, at least the very small thrash metal world or whatever, and you're getting all different types of people from different walks of life that like, oh, well, I like a few metal bands or heavy bands, but I'm more into this style of music, but I love your energy and I love your message. I can't really think of anything more mind-blowing than that.
Yeah. Well, Rick, unfortunately we're out of time, but this has been a really interesting conversation. And just knowing how much work you've put into it, I'd feel bad now if I don't immediately pre-order the album.
No, man, I'm sorry. I just kind of rambled at you for 20 or 40 minutes.
It was great. It was great. I'm just sat there going, yeah.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your shirt.
That's the first time anyone's noticed a wrestling shirt that I've been wearing.
Oh, dude, I don't know if you could see here, but let me see if I can get my finger in the camera here. Okay, you see all of this?
Yeah.
That is my Ultimate Warrior figure shelf.
I thought it was wrestling, but I couldn't quite make it out. So like even the belt, I was like, is that a belt or is it a plate?
the winged eagle belt. And I have my Ric Flair shelf to the side, but that's off camera. So
Nice.
huge wrestling guy.
Oh, good. Normally it just gets, oh, what is that? Oh, it's just
yeah. You don't want to get me started. I'll chew your ear off for another 40 minutes.
That's for another Zoom call. Well, Rick, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All the best with this album.
Thank you, man. And hopefully we'll see you in August. Fingers crossed we're going to make it overseas.